It does appear that in committee at previous meetings, councillors had agreed to inquire of how to get Mr Poll off his allotment. At the parish council meeting of Monday the 14th of March 2011, Councillor Arthur Mayo was to report that he had tried to make an appointment with Mr Frisby without success. In the meeting, he actually said that he had sent him several emails and he had not been replied to. In August 2008, Councillor Mayo was to tell Mr Poll that he kept emailing the Crown Estates agents, but got no reply. Mr Poll was to visit Hicks & Sons offices to see if this was the case. The secretary who was to handle incoming emails, that they had received one email from Mrs Maureen Mail, and that had been replied to. Mr Poll was to provide Mr Frisby with a letter and a DVD, so he was aware of the facts of the case. The minutes state, the clerk undertook to remind the Crown agents of what is unclear, but several months earlier the clerk was asked to write in respect of the plan that had been sent by the Crown Estate and asked them to explain the discrepancies. If that was the case, why did Councillor Mayo and Councillor Harrington not sort this problem out when they met with the Crown reps? At the council meeting of Monday the 11th of April 2011, in allotments, Councillor Mayo's report. Nothing to report except for an item to be taken in committee, which was agreed by members. Mr Poll was to receive a letter dated the 29th of April 2011 from Holbeach Parish Council. Crown Allotments, Holbeach Bank. Following a meeting of my parish council, I have been asked to inquire whether you are in a position to give up the above allotment land. The parish council are losing rent at the moment and appear to be at a standstill. If you were able to sign the note below, they would waive any rent due to them. Yours sincerely, Jill Harrington. Below it was a part to return. To Holbeach Parish Council. I hereby give notice to quit all my allotment land on the Crown Field at Holbeach Bank as of today's date. Signed, dated. With no tools, Mr Poll could not work the allotment. This appeared to be part of the plan. With no farm, he would not want the allotments, so the allotments could be handed back and everything covered up. Mr Poll had also got allotments on Basses, but there was no boundary dispute there, and there was no mention of an offer for them, with Mr Bramley voluntarily saying that Mr Palmer had pinched half the roadway, and when Mr Poll said a good half, agreeing with him, and also Mr Bramley agreeing with Mr Poll that the legal situation was that the fence should not be there, Mr Poll was not going to sign. He felt that if he did do, he'd be aiding and abetting a cover-up, that the council would hand the allotments back to the Crown. The Crown would hand them to Mr Baird, and Mr Baird would then lift the daffodils and sell them to O.A. Taylors, and have another nice little earner. The Fraud Act of 2006, Part 2, Fraud by False Representation, states a person is in breach of this section if he dishonestly makes a false representation and intends by making the representation to make a gain for himself or another, or to cause loss to another, or to expose another to a risk of a loss. Section 7 covers the making or supplying of articles for the use in fraud. A person is guilty of an offence if he makes, adapts, supplies, or offers to supply any article, knowing that it is designed or adapted for the use in the course of or in connection with fraud, intending it to be used to commit or assist in the commission of fraud. Was the Crown Estates plan drawn for that purpose? The plan showed a triangle at the back of the building plot that was sold. Was this to infer that the bit of land that Mr Palmer took into his garden at the back of his property was of little significance, that it did not stick out in the field as being claimed? And if it is of little significance, then why spend money trying to reclaim it? Councillor Mayo's allotment inspection report of 2007 stated that the area of the Crownfield Bank allotments was 4.86 hectares. The new plan was to show an area of 4.783 hectares. Add on the .018, which is supposedly owned by the Crown but in Mr Palmer's garden, gives 4.801 hectares. Add on the .009, which is not supposed to be owned by the Crown, gives 4.81 hectares, leaving a discrepancy of approximately 500 square metres. The triangle at the back of the building plot would only account for 50 square metres, leaving 450 square metres missing. It would therefore infer that both the entranceway and the triangle are both on Holbeach Parish Council's tenancy agreement. At the January Council meeting of 2005, Councillor Don Scott, Chairman of Allotments, asked for the Council's agreement for the entranceway to be closed. This was following his meeting with Mr Palmer and Mr Bramley. Surely he looked at the tenancy agreement before going to the meeting, and if the entranceway was not on the tenancy agreement, why should he have to ask the Council's permission for the entranceway to be closed? Apparently the plan with the tenancy agreement had never been compared to the plan supplied by Carter Jonas in 2010. That would soon answer the question. In 1999, Tim Jones supplied a plan, which he'd said had been copied from the Parish Council's tenancy agreement, and that showed the entranceway on the tenancy agreement. But where is the tenancy agreement and the tenancy agreement plan? So was Councillor Harrington covering up for his wife and the possibility of dereliction of duty in a public office? May 2011 saw Holbeach Parish have elections, but for the third time running there was more vacancies than nominations, and no actual voting took place. South Holland District Councillor Francis Biggerdike, former Chairman of Holbeach Parish Council, put a nomination in, but then did not sign to accept his office of councillor, apparently claiming he did not like what was happening on the council and did not want to be part of it. Councillor Biggerdike's non-acceptance of office meant a by-election would have to take place if 10 parishioners requested an election, which duly happened, and an election was held in September. The 5th of May was also the date for voting on the alternative vote, so Mr Paul went to his polling station at the Holbeach Bank Junior School. While there, he noted some bird feeders on his allotments on the Crownfield Bank. The following morning, Mr Paul went to see the clerk of Holbeach Parish Council and told Mrs Harrington of the bird feeders. She said she was not interested. She asked if Mr Paul had signed and brought the letter back that she had sent him. He said no. She said, "I need that. I have a finance committee and a district auditor to satisfy." Mr Paul replied, "Well, for the last few years you've been quite happy to pay the rent to the Crown, and pay rent for what's in Mr Palmer's garden because part of the allotments is in his garden." She got very irate and retorted, "You can't fight the Crown." Mr Paul replied, "You haven't really tried, have you?" Mr Paul asked again if she was going to do anything about the bird feeders. She snapped, "No." Mr Paul left the office and went to Spalding Police Station. The police informed him it was a matter for his landlord, Holbeach Parish Council. Mr Paul phoned Councillor Rita Rudkin, Deputy Chair of Holbeach Parish Council, and informed her of what had happened in the clerk's office.